Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. I'm Kinsey Schofield. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is royal author and historian Hugo Vickers and royal author Charlie Ray. I have to ask you really quickly, Hugo, I saw that you were in the States. I know that you did some speaking around my country. Did you get any unsolicited opinion when it came to what was going on right now with the royal family as you spoke to some of these American royal watchers? Was anybody like, I cannot believe Prince Harry or anything like that?
The short answer to your question is yes. Um, yes, so there's a lot of talk about that. I mean, they always seem to want to talk about those two. It seems inevitable wherever you go. Whatever else I was talking about, I do a talk called Queen 2 to King 3, which is like a move on the chessboard, which gives me a kind of a wide berth. They always want me to talk about the future of the monarchy, and I say, well, that'll make a very boring PowerPoint because it hasn't happened yet. And so I like talking about the Queen and leading into sort of as best as I can what's going on today. But it always ends up with those. And at the how much am I allowed to say? Well, you can edit out anything I say, I suppose, if you don't want it. At
Yes.
one at one club, there was I was doing my anti the crown, the Netflix Crown talk, and it got on to Prince Harry, and one of the women in the audience said, "Well, you know, Prince Harry chose Meghan Markle. He must really love her." And I said, "Really?" I said, "I've only got one last thing to say on that. I dread to think what happened in that tent in Botswana." And the whole audience laughed, and the president looked deeply shocked, the lady president.
This is why we love you. I can't believe you think I'd edit that out. I know that you travel a lot, Charles, too, because sometimes when I'm trying to get a hold of you, you're on like a cruise ship. What is the opinion when you're out and about and people find out that you were the Sun's royal correspondent forever? Do they immediately have an opinion on what's going
Oh
on?
yeah, I mean they have an opinion on various members of the royal family, but realistically, you're talking Harry and Meghan, William and Catherine, and the row. I mean, that's the only show in town, to be perfectly honest. And they really want to know more about, is William a bully? My view is no. Is Harry an idiot? My view is yes. Uh, so yes, the royals that have always and will always be, long after we three have all gone, will still continue to be one of the biggest shows in town.
Hugo, does it surprise you at all that Time 100's most influential list dropped today and Meghan Markle is absent from it after shoving a podcast, a brand new podcast series, a brand new TV series, 2 seasons down our throat, and a new lifestyle brand? Are you shocked that Meghan is absent from the list this year?
No, I'm not shocked at all. I think the whole thing has been frightfully boring. I mean, one of the lines that I came out with, because I wrote a book about Anthony Eden's wife, this is, because I do other things as well. And when I gave a talk in London about that, I said, in an age of plastic celebrities where they dissect petals and scatter them over salads in other people's kitchens, it was a joy to talk about a woman of real substance. And that's what it comes down to in the end.
That is so funny. I don't know how much you stay on top of the scandals in the US, Charles, but I was surprised to see Blake Lively on the list. But Meghan has been on the list before, but Blake Lively managed to make the list this year, as well as Serena Williams, one of Meghan's friends. I do think she'll consider it a bit of a sting that she was excluded. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, this is a woman who really wants to be noticed by everyone.
Mhm.
So, any of these lists where the most popular celebrity is XYZ and she's not on it, and people like Blake Lively, who's involved in a huge big court case, has been involved in a court case, and her one of her best friends, Serena Williams, is on the list. I mean, I haven't seen the complete list, so I'm assuming there's a whole load of other top celebrities on there. And Meghan hasn't even managed to reach 100. So
Yeah.
it's not a good look for her. But I'm not surprised given what's been going on, what she's doing, trying to sell tawdry items like jam and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it just it 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 it, it amazes me all the time.
I think we were surprised when they did make the list right upon their Megxit exit. Remember, it was that awful picture of Harry and Meghan on the cover. And then one of the pictures inside, or one of the pictures they used to promote it, the joke was that Harry looked like Meghan's hairdresser because her hair was out to here and Prince Harry was like awkwardly standing behind her. But there was so much mystery surrounding what they were capable of doing upon leaving the royal family, because at the time, their narrative was that the royal family was holding them back, and
Sure.
that they were going to escape this royal family that wasn't allowing them to accomplish what they could because they weren't the priority. William and Catherine were the priority. And here we are, 4 years later, and Meghan is shilling her favorite pair of Spanx from Amazon on Instagram instead of changing the world the way that they promised they would be changing the world. So I did a forensic search because I wanted to know if she made the list, and she didn't. And I guess I'm not surprised either. Hugo, I want to ask you about Prince Harry talking to People magazine again, one of his favorite publications, one of his buddies. Uh, he spoke to People magazine, but then a source likely endorsed by the Sussexes, also told People that Prince Harry's calls and outreach to King Charles aren't being reciprocated. First of all, I'd say the way that this is positioned, it makes it sound like Prince Harry's picking up the phone every day. And I highly doubt that that's the case. And second, I would just say, or I would ask you, why does he continue to do this? He's putting his father in a very difficult position, and to a royal watcher that supports the crown, it feels like a violation of the king's privacy.
Well, of course, the first truth is we don't actually know what happens between them. Secondly, as I've said on many occasions before, the king has been very clever because he has left the door wide open, and he has never responded to any of the jibes or any of the javelins thrown at him by his son, of which, as you know, there have been many. And so we have, I think, in the past heard Prince Harry saying that the royal family owes him an apology. In fact, of course, it's the other way round. He owes them an apology. So I think the ball is very much in his court. I think you'll find that if he really made a big effort to see the king or to somehow, uh, you know, um, conciliate with him, he would be welcome. Less so with his brother, but I think definitely with the king, because after all, the king, is his father. He even said, I even quoted in that ghastly book Spare, as saying, don't make my last days miserable by fighting and all these things. And Prince Harry has contributed to that enormously, as he did indeed with the late Queen. I mean, he and Meghan Markle made her last days, but they were one of the factors that made them very difficult, which is unforgivable, actually.
I completely agree with you, and I imagine that Charles does too. Charles, in a Daily Beast article about Harry talking to People magazine, they say, less surprisingly, Prince William, who was trashed in Harry's memoir Spare, as was his wife Catherine, has also refused Harry's attempts to be in contact. William's friends have made it clear to the Daily Beast that he despises his brother for betraying his trust. Do you feel like despises is a uh, too extreme of a word to describe how Prince William feels towards Prince Harry? I think he's just checked out and he's numb towards his brother these days.
I think despise is quite a strong word. There is clearly uh, conflict between the two boys. And, just following on from what Hugo was saying, we know the king does not like conflict of any type whatsoever. We know that. So he goes out of his way, to skirt it around. And you also have to remember that whispering in his ear as well is William,
Mm.
which he is the future king. And the worry is that if you allow Harry access into the inner circle, is it going to end up on Netflix? Or is it going to end up in another book? Or is it going to end up in another
People
Oprah
magazine article.
People magazine article? Yeah. So they're very, very cautious of Harry. Harry hasn't shown anything at all where he can be trusted by both his father and his brother. And this is a very, very big problem for him and in the future.
So I liked how you mentioned that people ask if Prince William is really a bully, and that's something you disagree
Mm.
with, because I disagree with that as well. I think he just is assertive and knows the difference between right and wrong, and actually managed to develop a common sense, which I'm actually not sure Prince Harry ever developed. I do believe Prince William has some common sense. But you did state that there are questions surrounding Prince William being a bully. Obviously, I think that those generate some of that gossip was generated from Spare, where Prince Harry
Sure.
talks about physical altercations, and Prince William, his disdain for Meghan Markle, accusing her of being a bully, ironically. There is a report circulating about, well, quite simply, it's the idea that Meghan Markle is utilizing this HRH title. I felt like she did posted that letter to her, where she is addressed as HRH on purpose. We know she knows how to crop a photo because she crops every picture of her kids. We don't ever see their faces. We'll see a random head, a random back of head, or a random back of hand, but we know the woman knows how to crop an image. And she chose to include the title in this message that she shared on Instagram. Prince William, there's been talk about this vengeance that he feels, and he's going to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles. Quickly, I'll ask you, Hugo, and Charles. I'd like a similar response from you. But Hugo, how much of this is vengeance and how much of this is consequence? They aren't behaving themselves. They're not following the rules.
Well, once again, we don't know what Prince William is going to do, and he probably doesn't even know himself, to be quite honest. But what I've always thought, I mean, sort of rounding up what you said, what she's always wanted and what she has now obtained is global recognition. And how did she do that? She did it by marrying Prince Harry. Frankly, we wouldn't be talking about her if she wasn't married to a prince. And that's what interests people. That's what gives it, if you like, the soap opera element. And so to be again, okay, you're not allowed to use the Royal Highness thing, but she jolly well uses the Duchess of Sussex thing. And so I could well see how Prince William might decide that a blanket removal of all these things would be a good idea because there are coronets all over the products. I mean, it's that's what they do. That's how they market themselves. So it's a sort of detail. But equally, I have to say, rather pompously, it's quite difficult to remove a dukedom. It require an act of Parliament, and Parliament's got rather more important things to think about than Prince Harry.
Is it the HRH title that's really frustrating people, or is it the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? Because I feel like there's a lot of anger surrounding HRH because it's something that Princess Diana was stripped of. So why did we not strip Harry and Meghan of it? Is
But,
that
well,
is that
Uh,
easier to remove?
Can I jump in? What
Yeah.
I'm told, I was told on very good authority, and maybe I think I have a feeling Charles probably agreeing with me here, is actually what she said was, no, I don't want to keep it. And then when they took it away, she said, well, they've taken it away from me.
yeah.
Is that
Oh,
what you heard?
That's absolutely correct. It was
Yeah.
Diana herself who, in one of her strops, decided I don't need the HRH title, and that was in the same vein as I don't want these police bodyguards because she thought some of them were tapping her phone, were reporting to her husband, were doing all sorts of things. So she threw a strop, and she was the one who gave up the HRH, and it was the Queen who said, "Okay, fair enough." And of
yeah.
course, after, as Hugo quite rightly mentions, it was, hang on a second, but you can't get it
Yeah.
back.
Wow.
You,
Well, that sounds a lot like Harry and Meghan, who said, we're just going to jump on Tyler Perry's plane, go do our own thing. And then when the royal family was like, fine, that's when they call Oprah Winfrey and say, we're going to unleash because we're angry over this decision and we started the whole thing. But Hugo, so is HRH easier to strip than a Duke or Duchess title?
Yes, I think so. There is now a rule in place that if a
Mhm.
member of the royal family divorces, they automatically lose it because Fergie, the Duchess of York, didn't realize that she had lost it after she divorced, and it had to be pointed out to her. But it is now somewhere written down. I don't know where exactly or how, but that is the form. But it's amazing that they go through all this because they went through such a hassle over the Duchess of Windsor and her HRH. I mean, the Duke, she didn't mind particularly, but the Duke spent sort of 35 years whining and whinging about that. I mean, he was always wanting her to be made HRH. And in Paris, they always said, well, in France, you have equal status. So she was always called Altesse in the house, in Paris. So it's a silly nonsense, really. But the main point is that they are exploiting their name, whatever that is. It's Prince and it's Duke of Sussex, Duchess of Sussex, and little coronets.
Yeah, it's so wild to see. Charles, talk to me about Meghan Markle's use of the title. Last week, we saw her show up in an over-the-top four-car motorcade to go out for a night on the town in New York. She wanted to see a Broadway show. Is this an overall branding strategy because she is determined to keep the air of royalty while she's shilling products? Or is this just another example of Harry and Meghan's paranoia, primarily Prince Harry's paranoia when it comes to safety?
I love that American phrase, shilling products, because it just sums her up all too well. And just a matter on the Duke and Duchess's
Yeah,
title. You
please.
have to remember that that was a wedding gift from the late Queen. That she bestowed those titles on it. So it would be, as Hugo quite rightly suggests, that there'd have to be some sort of act of parliament to remove those titles. And I'm not sure that William, it would be that vengeful, if you like, to use your phrase, in removing it. I think he would be more concerned with the use of the HRH because it is a sort of gentleman's agreement that they don't use it, very much like Prince Andrew, for obvious reasons, is not allowed to use his title HRH anymore since what happened. And you know that I read this story about this four-car convoy. Her in one car, two other cars decoys, one other vehicle at the premises, involving a New York police as well. And do you remember a couple of years ago all that drama that there was about car
Near
crashes?
catastrophic car chase, near
Oh, car chase,
catastrophic.
which turned out to be complete load of old tosh.
Yeah.
And you wonder why she needs that sort of thing. And I think it's because she wants the status of it all. She demands to be we still refer to her as Meghan Markle. I mean, although now she's now decided she's Meghan Sussex because it's far better for her to be Meghan Sussex than Meghan Markle. And I just can't see how she can manage. I mean, I was reading something just before we got together about how she's now selling some clothes which are very much like the clothes of George, Charlotte, and Louis on one of her sites that for this these branded clothes that the kids wore at the time, which seems to me to be another slight against the Waleses.
And creepy. I mean,
Uh,
it's creepy.
Yeah, but it just goes to show what she does, and what she wants to do to make money.
Desperation. Hugo, when we talk about this status that I think is very important to both Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, part of me thinks that uh, his entire crusade against the government for security is all about wanting to keep up with his brother's status, less about, I don't feel safe in this country. Let me just hop on a plane to Ukraine in the middle of a war, but more about, well, how come my brother gets that? I want two sausages, whatever, his tit for tat when it comes to his brother. Um, is Meghan will Meghan ever achieve the kind of royal association that Princess Diana somehow managed to hold on to after she divorced King Charles? It seemed like everyone wanted her to remain a princess and they adored her. I know that there were some iffy moments around her death where people were angry that she was with Dodi and they thought that, I mean, he was pretty, I mean, he was pretty gross. Nothing, he was doing coke in bathrooms in Los Angeles like a month before that. So we got to be, he wasn't necessarily what we would want a princess to be with. But do you think that Meghan has lost that because of the route she took in not only tearing into the British royal family, but now this real monetization of the monarchy that feels vulgar?
Well, surely what she's doing is reinventing herself the whole time, because that's, if you're a member of the royal family, a working member of the royal family, you're in the system and you're doing things for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, you're doing it for your charities, for your regiments, and all that sort of thing. And so you get on with it. Now they have cut a lonely furrow, a lonely path. And so they have to completely always find some new way of making a splash. And hence, here we are talking about their latest activities. And I don't know how long they can go on doing that, but it seems to me they're forever changing direction. And it's one thing after another. No, of course, she will never have Diana's status. I mean, Diana was actually a very good princess by and large. She had the gifts of all the best princesses of history, which is that she was good with the old, the wounded, and the weak. When she held a baby, it was totally natural. When other people tried to do that, it looked uncomfortable. And she had a particular touch. I mean, I'm sure Charlie will have probably followed her much more than I did, but I mean, I met her about half a dozen times, and she was amazing, and she was really, really good at it. And her people skills were good too. And I'm afraid, in this case, they aren't. It's not going to work.
Yeah, Meghan's watching Meghan Markle scold her quote unquote friend in a kitchen about the use of a last name is not necessarily something that I would describe as a people skill. Hugo, we talk about this pretty often, so I'm wondering, and Charles, if you remember this, please jump in. I can't remember the exact wording, but it is so funny to watch them chase this status and to think back on the Oprah Winfrey interview when Meghan specifically says to Oprah, and I wish I could remember it word for word, I'm paraphrasing, but she's talking about Archie's title. And she says titles are the grandeur. The grandeur is not important to her. And here we are a few years later, watching her correct people on television about what to call her, watching her repost letters that are where her title is far greater than the title she's supposed to be utilizing. It there's an air of desperation. Do either one of you remember that line where she's
Yes.
looking at Oprah and she's like, the grandeur is not important to me? Hugo, what's your reaction there?
Well, yes, if you remember, she was even saying that that Archie was going to be denied a title because of the potential colour of his skin. So she was playing a very nasty race card at that point. And actually, if she had bothered, which of course she wouldn't have done, to look at the George V's regulations about the House of Windsor, she would have known perfectly well that as soon as King Charles became king, Archie would have become an HRH and a prince. In his own right, because what it is it's the sons and daughters of the sovereign, and it is the sons and daughters of sons of the sovereign. That is why Princess Anne's children, Princess Margaret's children, and so forth, don't have royal titles. Simple as that. But she actually made it an issue as if they were holding it back specifically. And then, of course, I mean, come on, later on, she suddenly decides that they're going to be called Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet when they're out in California. Prince Edward, on the other hand, very sensibly decided that his children would not have royal titles when they were going through school because it would make it much easier for them. They're entitled to them, but they don't actually use them.
Yeah,
Be
it's
It'd be
ridiculous.
interesting to see what happens when Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet actually go to school and mix with, Master so and so and Miss so and so. Children can be terrible, and the bullying for those two children, I think she's made a rod for their own backs. And like Hugo, I remember the thing about the titles, and she was trying to make a race point on those titles. And I found it disgraceful. And even more disgraceful was the fact that the guy sitting next to her, her husband, would have known that. He was part of the family. All he had to do was look it up beforehand. So he would have known that those kids would eventually get those titles. And why on earth, he didn't stop her putting her, sizable foot into her mouth. I have no idea.
Well, we've seen Prince Harry this week in his interview with People talk about how supportive he is of Meghan's new business ventures. Hugo, does it surprise you at all that Meghan did not defend him over the last few weeks as the Sentebale chaos started to unfold, especially when there were accusations of misconduct when it came to race and misogyny. All Meghan Markle had to do was release one statement or post one Instagram post and say, standing by the Sentebale co-founder who I believe in. I mean, there didn't have to be bells and whistles. It doesn't have to be a video, but it's surprising to me to watch this man give up his entire life, his entire family, so that Meghan Markle can sell cookies and not see her ever take up for him ever. It's always about him elevating her.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, look at what happened at the Invictus Games when she seized the microphone and sort of did a sort of 10-minute introduction when she was the person on the stage saying rather sort of annoyingly, well, I'm going to introduce somebody in a minute onto the platform. I mean, come off it. It's quite simple what's going on. He is a hostage, basically. And also, I think, if I take it one step further, my feeling is that he's petrified of her and petrified of losing her. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
that syndrome people get into sometimes? It's not a nice
Yes.
state to be in.
Yes, yes. Charles, you have seen Sentebale grow and you've seen how much it meant to him, at least at the beginning. I mean, Dr. Sophie Shandaka says today that she was having to beg Prince Harry to actually come visit. And to Hugo's point, it might have been because Mama had put her foot down and was like, I need you to stay here. I don't want you going over there. I need you to stay here and be with us. Do you think that this is a huge loss for Prince Harry? And does it surprise you that Meghan Markle hasn't supported him throughout the process, especially hearing Dr. Sophie Shandaka say that Meghan Markle actually instigated the fallout?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the fact is, Sentebale was really his first real big charity because of his mother and Princess also as well, the loss of his mother as well. So it was a heart thing for them to set up. And all of this, they seem to have forgotten about the people that they're there to try to help, the children with AIDS and other diseases. And when you looked at the videos which have been played over and over again on social media of that dreadful polo match of where Meghan is standing next to Harry and Sophie comes through and has got to then go under the cup to be ushered out of the way by Meghan. That speaks volumes. And there is no doubt in my mind that the one person who you can say is probably the lead problem is Meghan Markle in all this. Um, I mean, I've watched interviews with Sophie, and she sounds a really reasonable woman. There clearly has been something going on wrong. I'm surprised that the trustees, who are all, if you like, Harry's mates and everything else, resigned straight away. Why didn't they stay and sort of try to sort it all out? It's just a terrible, terrible mess. Terrible mess.
Well, Hugo, to Dr. Sophie's point, it does kind of feel like they were Dr. Sophie's defense of all of Prince Harry's friends. We know that they were all Prince Harry's friends that were on the board and the trustees, because she said she would just be in a meeting and Prince Harry would be like, I'm introducing my friend to the board now. And that would kind of frustrate her because she said that there was no real protocol or process. It would just be like, here's Prince Harry introducing us to another friend. But she did say that she felt like their ultimate objective was to blow it up so that he could return to be the savior and fix it all. Does that make sense to you hearing that explanation? I'm going to say, because before you can say it, because you're very good at this, obviously there are two sides to every story and we don't know the ins and outs. We don't know all the details. But to me, listening to her explanation, they come out and say she's spending all this money to try to fundraise. And she comes out and says, I am having trouble fundraising because your brand is toxic, because people are asking me about you and your wife. For every claim they have, she has a legitimate sounding reaction.
Well, there you have the problem. Is that in a sense he's probably become a liability now for that very reason. I mean, everybody always wants to talk about them, what's going on with them, and the focus should be on the charity. So, he probably will end up as having been the founder of a really good idea. And of course, the other thing is the Invictus Games. I mean, how long is that going to go on for? Then is he going to drop that as well? Are they going to find that he's too much trouble? Are they going to find that they have to put up with all her demands? And this cuts him off from the two remaining things for which all his life he was trained and which he is very good at. I mean, I too have seen him in foreign countries. I've seen him playing cricket with the children. They love him. And he also, in the olden days, he always looked so happy for the simple reason that he was putting something into life rather than taking something out of life. And you find usually that people are much happier when they're doing good for others. Sounds
And
pompous, but it's true.
Hugo talks earlier on about Princess Diana and how great she was, and I think Harry has forgotten entirely how his mother operated when it came to her charities. She walked into a room and it was $10,000 a plate. There was no, I'm making some jam. There was no,
Yeah.
I'm selling clothes. I'm just here to help the charity. And the big thing as well is that unfortunately, when she died, one of the charities appointed a guy called David Ginola, who is a very famous French footballer, and to her position in that charity, and the money that came in went from top end to zero because it wasn't Princess Diana, and that was her makeup entirely. And Harry seems to have forgotten that he should be doing exactly what his mother was doing. I've got great admiration for him on his Invictus Games. I did have admiration for him on Sentebale and his well child. When he's there with the children and everything else, he's fabulous. But he seems to have forgotten the main function of what he's there, and that is to draw in the money to help that particular charity.
I feel like had Harry and Meghan not gone such a bitter and vengeful route once they stepped away from the royal family, they could have gone the Princess Diana route. They could
Oh,
have just been sitting in rooms and people paying $10,000, dollars a plate to be in their essence. But because they've been so bitter and nasty, they've lost their sparkle. And because they've overshared, they've lost the mystery that makes the royal family so special. I know way too much about these people's lives. Every week now, Meghan Markle's dropping a podcast telling me about some new medical ailment that I didn't ask for, and they've just lost that thing that made them so glossy and beautiful and gorgeous. And to Hugo's point, where's Prince Harry's joy? I haven't seen joy written on his face in
oh yeah.
probably since his wedding day.
No, no, I think you're right. And I think as well you've got to remember it was not the British people and it was not the British royal family that kicked them out. It was their decision to go. And the reason they decided to go is that Meghan realized that in the pecking order of the royal family, she was maybe three or four.
She was
So she had
sixth on the call sheet again, like at
Oh
Suits.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's the point of it. She could have. I watched them on when they did jobs in the UK when it was like the old days of Diana. It was 10 deep in the pavement, watching the whole thing. People wanted to see them. People wanted to get close to them. People wanted to enjoy their company. And it was them that suddenly saw that. Hang on a second, William's getting all this, benefits and everything else, and he's going to be king. Well, what about us? What are we going to be? Diana's one wish was that when William became king, is that the guy who stood by his side would be Harry. That ain't going to happen anymore.
I don't think so either, Hugo. I don't think so either.
No, there's rather an interesting historical sort of comparison that you could make, which was that the Duke of Windsor, after he abdicated, he basically thought he could come back and reinvent himself as a younger brother of the king and bring Wallis Simpson with him. Well, no way, that wasn't going to happen. So when he got this invitation to go to Berlin, he took her with him, and the Foreign Office were absolutely furious. He had no right to go to Berlin. He wasn't representing the royal family, and he was really only doing it in a way to sort of show that he was still something of a world figure and that she was going to be respected. I mean, forget all the ridiculous Nazi stuff, which has come subsequently. We won't go into that at this moment, but that wasn't why they went to Berlin. They went to Berlin for that because they were sent there to look at housing, but also because a man said, you are a man of the world. You fought in the First World War, or the Great War, as they would have called it. Maybe you can do some good, by doing it. And was acting independently. So again, I wonder what the Foreign Office thought about the Ukraine trip. I mean, I don't know how that came about, but he's returning to being a sort of royal. That's a sort of royal visit, such as the others do. And yet he has, in a way, no right to do that because he's not representing this country anymore. And then, of course, you get people saying, is he only there to get publicity for himself? So
Yeah.
it backfires.
Yes, because I truly felt like the Ukraine visit and a little bit along with the London visit, because I didn't see the value in him physically being there. I felt like that was all to distract from Sentebale, because the Sentebale narrative had gotten so out of control, and American media was not siding with Prince Harry. So I felt like, I'm going to jump on a plane. I'm going to go to London. I'm going to reposition myself as the victim. I can't come to my home country because I'm in danger and my daddy won't help me. And then goes over to Ukraine so that he can also remind us, oh, by the way, I do a lot of stuff with veterans, so I'm still a good guy. Honestly, Hugo, they've put themselves in this position of us being cynical about them, because there's no consistency when it comes to just doing good. There seems to be an ulterior motive in everything that they do. And they spent so much time trashing the royal family that we don't consider them these uplifters the way we do William and Catherine.
Exactly, and that's the sad thing is that I still think that that especially after Spare, funnily enough, when I think in Middle America. And a guy in his farmyard, sort of, if he read about Spare, he'd say, I didn't like somebody writing about his father like that. It's like you just didn't do that. He's not a good guy to do that. Of course, he didn't write the book himself. It was ghosted, as you know, by J.R. Moringa, a very clever writer, who actually said at one point in the New Yorker that his memoirs were not the story of his life, but a series of incidents that would interest the general public. So you can disregard an awful lot of it. I could go on at length about the mistakes and also the misinterpretations. I won't bore you with that, but
But they're good. They're good. You're right.
Yeah.
Charles, where do you see Harry and Meghan going from here? I'm exhausted with the Meghan Markle oversaturation right now. Is she going to continue on with this trend? She had a source tell the New York Post in December of 2024 that 2025 was going to be the year of the Markle sparkle. Immediately, she's torn to shreds for her walking through the rubble of the fires in LA. So she postponed her show. She released her show. It was torn to shreds. And then she tries to distract with, I got a season 2. Immediately after that, releases a podcast. Are we ever going to get a break?
I don't think so. I mean, clearly, this bubble is going to burst at some stage or other. I mean, I don't know how it's going to burst. I mean, people talk about them divorcing. I really genuinely hope that they don't, because they've only really got each other left. And I would hate to see, a marriage break up the way things seem to be going. Um, but something is bound to happen that will change the way things are going. I mean, Meghan's going to carry on with all this rubbish that she does and everything else, and Harry is as we know is now going to be left picking up bits and pieces and maybe going off to see a couple of charities and everything else, which I think he's very good at. I mean, I like to see him do that, but he needs to stop moaning about his family. He's got to realize, he's got to get it into his brain that he lives in Montecito. The British public are not going to pay for his security when he comes to this country. And with the greatest of respect to you, Kinsey, America's a lot deadlier
That's what I think too.
to live in than it is in Britain. That much I can assure you. And we have a few problems, but nowhere near as much as you guys have.
Amen. I feel you. Hugo, did you have a reaction before I shut us down?
Well, only just to say that, of course, when he does come to this country, when he attends the Platinum Jubilee of the Queen or the Queen's funeral, he is encompassed in the same security barrier, as all the rest of them. So I don't know what he's whining about. I agree with Charles. I mean, I think I'm sure there's some dangers, but I don't see him as a particular target. I also think that probably he's just what happens to people. He's got into this and he's not going to let it go. And the lawyers, one way and another, are encouraging him, have another go. You might yet win. And guess who's going to be the real winners? The
The
lawyers.
lawyers. Yeah, exactly. Well, also, Hugo, it's my understanding that the royal family or the institution, I don't know exactly who to refer to here, but it's my understanding that Prince Harry has been told that he is allowed to stay on site if he is in London. He's allowed to stay in Buckingham Palace. He's allowed to stay in one of the venues when he visits. I don't know if it's necessarily encouraged when he's there to sue the government, but I have heard that he is welcome to stay in certain spaces if as long as he gives them the appropriate notice, and that Prince Harry chooses to stay in these hotels, which in my opinion elevate his security concerns to not be staying at a palace where there's already all of this protocol in place.
Well, that's quite likely. I don't know the answer to that, to be quite honest. I don't know whether he would argue that if he does that, that his room's going to be bugged or something. I mean, he may
Yeah.
have some silly reason for not wishing to be there, or he may feel that he's too observed and that sort of thing. I just don't know. But he does seem to pop up from time to time, and as you rightly say, he stays in strange hotels at his own volition.
So weird. Okay. Agree with us, disagree with us, let us know below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. And Hugo, it was so great. I loved watching your journey on Instagram. If you don't follow Hugo on Instagram, make sure you do. And you can see some of the fun he had in the States over the last few weeks. Charles, I need to see you more often. I haven't seen you in a while, so it's good to see that handsome mug. And I hope I see
You're
you
very
both
kind.
again very, very soon. Thanks for talking to me.
It's a pleasure.
Bye, gentlemen.